Hello and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. I am Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Sean Michael Small.
It's another day in paradise. Well, later on today, and it's a topic we'll get into further into the program, we'll have a 7th president here in TNT. President-elect Christian Kanglu will be sworn in. But the city is buzzing. There's sirens all over the place. Traffic isn't too bad, but it's certainly going to be a hectic day. So whatever you do, be prepared for traffic.
That's the thing. I was surprised how little traffic they had this morning because the traffic notice that I saw, I believe, said from 7 a.m. Thankfully, that technically proved not to be the case in some capacity, or maybe I misread something with regards to when traffic was being diverted, but I didn't necessarily see anything outside of that time frame. So
actually, I actually thought that the traffic this morning was a lot better than
in some cases,
usually,
yes.
And I'm just wondering, I wonder if people just took the opportunity to say, you know what, I'll just work from home today.
Well, and I guess that's the thing, right? As much as some people would come in to try to get to work for 8 or for 7:30 or for 7. Not everybody is coming in at that time. There's quite a lot of cars that come in, as I'm sure you know, later. So what happens to those people now? That would be somewhat unfortunate because the amount of roads and diversions, and then of course the bottlenecking, because once you take away even a single road in our network around Port of Spain, you are begging for traffic to back up quite a bit, potentially. Just that one sinkhole. I'll always come back to that. That one sinkhole just before Cokery there caused traffic to back up into Woodbrook from St. James. So it's interesting. I mean, I've even heard people wonder, do we need all of this
grandeur and ceremony?
Exactly.
You know, the pomp of it all. But listen, you know, thus far, at least up until 7:50 this morning, the police were out in their numbers and they seem to be doing a very good job. So hope they keep that up. Anyway, without further delay, let's get into the daily review. And oh boy, is it a juicy one. There's a gentleman by the name of Ira Archie. He's the Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago and head of the Judicial Service Commission. Now, this situation with respect to the Director of Public Prosecutions, Roger Gaspard, the Attorney General, Reginald Moore, and Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley took a very interesting twist when on Friday night, Chief Justice Ira Archie, well, he made a release to sort of, according to him, clarify the erroneous claims that are being made publicly.
Yes, which now I'm sort of left in a weird situation of whose claims do I take. But the unfortunate thing is, it still begs the question, well, hold on, stop. If you've had this problem all this time, why are you now addressing it now? Or is it that you didn't realize there was a problem? That's if we take what he had to say on the service. But what he did say is essentially, it was the DPP who did not put names up for promotion. It was the DPP who did not say that he had staffing needs in order for it to be filled. And I'm wondering now about the logistics. And sometimes it does come back down to just these technical matters. But keep blame aside for a second. Weren't you still in charge of this? How is it, to what extent is it the DPP's authority when there's a whole service commission, which technically is supposed to be independent? And if he was supposed to have authority over it, then wouldn't he have just had authority over it? But okay, if this is the system that they want to undertake, fine. If this is the system that they want, okay. But you're, on a practical level, you're the Chief Justice. Can't you see the problems and try to find a solution as opposed to let it fester for however many years?
Well,
and then want to say, well, you know, it's not in my job description, it's in his job description. This is about national security issues, the criminal courts, and you're just going to basically want to, your excuse is, well, no. Under his purview. He had to do it, and I'm waiting on him. Why are you waiting? In a properly functioning entity, at some point you don't wait. You go to the person and say, hey, once you hold up, let's grease the system and move this moving forward.
The thing is, the Chief Justice tries to cover all grounds, and if I were to be frank, the DPP always had questions to answer. The thing is, what the Chief Justice has done is just put dates towards it. He is saying that how it is the fault of the DPP for the lack of staff, and he's also saying it's because of a lack of management and a lack of promotion, even a lack of team training exercises. The unfortunate thing for me is, as the Chief Justice, it seems as though, back to what you were suggesting as to why it is he did not intervene sooner, because he's the head of the Judicial Service Commission. It's very, very intriguing to me that he is now detailing that the proper procedure would be for the office of the DPP to actually put forward names for promotions and to also ensure staff are hired with notification to the Chief Justice. To me, the issue is that it seems as though it's convenient to actually go through the process, the proper process, when it's just convenient to you. Mm-hmm. You just decide that this is, you know what, this is proper procedure, politically this is it, therefore I'm going to go through with it. You can't go through procedures out of convenience while completely ignoring them when many a times they matter. I think overall it's very unfortunate, extremely unfortunate, that the Chief Justice sought to actually come out and make these statements, because he stayed silent and he stayed rather quiet many a times before when you thought, listen, should we be hearing from the Chief Justice? Where's the Chief Justice? Hold up, I only hear from him when it's the opening of the new law term.
Yes.
And because of the links, or the alleged links, between himself and the Prime Minister, because this Chief Justice, as is with previous Chief Justices, are seen as a political body, a political entity, he just adds fire. He just adds fire to something that has burst into political bacchanal.
Well, the other thing is this. You're going to make a complaint. You're going to get a response. The public and analysts from the public are going to say, well, technically, you're complaining about not doing your job, not about him not doing his job. Then you're going to come and clarify with what you claim to be the proper procedure, which I'm not necessarily entirely sold that Chief Justice must wait on the DPP to give information with regards to X, Y, and Z. You know, like, and he can't do anything at all. He just has to wait and simmer in his rage. How dare you not do this function? I cannot do mine. I mean, just ask the president, you know, when you're ready, some bureaucrats, they cut through the red tape, even if the red tape actually is there to say, no, you can't cut through it in this way. So I would just like to find out, in your position as a public person, why did you think that this incomplete criticism to start off with was a good idea? That you're just going to say, hey, I'm going to attack the DPP, I'm not going to give a reason, and then when people respond to that, now I'm going to find a reason to justify my position. To me, that is a sign, well, either, you know, as much as you're a public person, you really are not good at public communication, in which case maybe you should A, not speak publicly, or B, not be in such a high profile role, or perhaps this overall situation is just a slip up in that the motivations are not in good faith. That's why he had to find the justification the second go around, because he didn't have it ready the first time.
I don't think it's anything to do with communication. In my opinion, I think it's more so to do with where you stand and how it is you exactly see your role and position as to whether or not you choose to be independent of other entities. Because two things. One, if the Chief Justice had not made this intervention, what would the public think? Would the public expect the Chief Justice, again, who I reiterate is the head of the Judicial and Legal Service Commission, to actually make a comment? Would they have expected that? Or is it that because, again, you only really hear from the Chief Justice when the law term is opening? Whether or not we would have been better off or worse off, I don't think we would have been better off. I don't think we would have been worse off. I think we would have been in the same position. To me, he should not have. He chose wrong. He should not have made this intervention because it's a public dispute. It is a public dispute between the office of the DPP and the DPP, as well as the AG, as well as the Prime Minister. It's a political dispute. And because now he has chosen in his position to intervene in a political dispute, I think it's wrong. I don't think he should have made that decision at all. I think he should have refrained. In fact, if anything, it probably required intervention behind closed doors to try and shed light rather than add fuel to the flames.
Again, but I'll still go back. While I think you're right in the sense that it's not just a communication issue, I'm seeing the inability or lack of proficiency, because without stating that I have tried to speak to the DPP, I have tried to work with the DPP, I have contacted him multiple times to alleviate the situation, as far as I could tell, that's not in his statements. His statement is all his fault, his fault, his fault, his fault, he didn't do this, he didn't do that, he didn't do that. Sounds like a school child that's basically trying to tell the teacher why he shouldn't be punished, right? He didn't say all of those things. He just gave us one little bacchanal statement, because that's essentially what it kind of comes down to, right? Okay, you're doing this wrong. So then people point out on a technical level, based on what the law says, well, no, isn't that your job? It's not the DPP's job. Why blame the DPP? Now he's gone a step further. But he has not given us a full explanation, right, to try to justify this. It's just very piecemeal with a lot of holes in it. The full explanation might be there. It might be. But we can't assume that it's there. We just have to go with, again, what you say. So one of the things that he said, just my final point on this, he said that the DPP's Gaspard's view that at least 150 attorneys were required. He thinks that's not viable. Well, you see, the problem with that is, first of all, what's your criteria for making that claim? And then second of all, exactly why do you think that saying, well, having enough lawyers, because by saying it's not viable, he's not saying that it's not true. He's the most reasonable interpretation by saying something is not viable is that it doesn't matter whether it's needed or not, we just can't do it. But this is not standard bureaucracy, this is criminal courts. And if we have that need, we need a better explanation with regards to what's going on, as to say why we cannot meet that need. And then the other thing is, if it's in your view that we can't meet that need, then is it really the DPP who's not doing his job? Because you don't want to meet the staffing levels that the DPP wants to meet. So we come back down to the fact that whose fault is it really now? And to some extent, are you the one keeping the staffing levels down? Because in your view, it doesn't need, it can't get that far. But this is not somebody to push paper for some kind of town and country or whatever. This is criminal court.
I think it's interesting to note, so this is my final point on this, that Professor Hamid Ghani has taken the position that, well, he's noting that it's very interesting the timing this entire public spat has occurred. He says he himself is questioning whether or not it is linked to the DPP actually dropping charges against those accused in the Piarco 1 case. Mm-hmm. Putting that aside for a moment and bringing back in what Karen said last week on the program, I was not here, but she was alluding to the possibility that the Prime Minister and the Attorney General, she even mentioned the Chief Justice.
Yeah.
So that to me was interesting, that Karen at that time took the position. She says, it seems as though they're trying to oust him. Right, they're trying to push him out of the office. Now, there is a possibility that could happen. I mean, he's constitutionally protected, but he can just say, oh, you know what, I don't need this. Mm-hmm. Enough is enough. I'm just going to tender my resignation. And where does that leave us? Is it that we're going to have somebody who would be politically influenced now taking that position? So my thing is, listen, Ivor Archie, there are many controversies surrounding your tenure as Chief Justice, and I was hoping that you would not add to it. it would have been a lot better if you tried to have been more of a mediator to try and resolve these issues. Instead, you've decided to take a position, and need I say, it's a very interesting one, to say the least. But Roger Gaspar, there are allegations that have been labeled against you in the public sphere. I think that you should answer to them, but at the same time, I have more questions for Reginald, more questions for the Prime Minister. Roger Gaspar, answer these allegations, but at the same time, hold firm, hold strong. Don't give up just like that.
Well, your last point, then, I think that goes back to what you were saying initially. The Chief Justice shouldn't have commented, and you're right. By commenting, he puts an opinion out there that puts him in a camp. He picks a side by default, whether he wanted to or not. And this is the thing: he could be independent, but now what he needs to realize is, by making those statements, even if he was completely independent, it makes him look as though he's in league.
Well, I actually wonder if the Prime Minister and the Attorney General actually, I wouldn't say forced, but were rather coercive in the Chief Justice making this comment, releasing this. But anyway.
Moving on, before we run out of time, as per usual, the Commission of Inquiry. Well, that report with regards to the tragedy of the Paria situation, that's been delayed. Potentially by a month, although I'm starting to think, based on what was said, it could be more than a month, because the head of the commission, King's Counsel Jerome Lynch, he basically said salmon letters have to be given out, and then there are dates in May where people could respond to the reports once they receive the salmon letters, which potentially means it could go on beyond May. While it's disappointing to see that it's delayed, I guess you could say I'd rather the process be correct and be thorough and not leave any, or as much as possible, leave any questions of doubt. However, it's over a year now, a year and a half now.
Yes, the thing is no, it's just over a year. February 25th was the tragedy. But
well, by the time May into June, we're like 5 months down from a year.
But a year and a quarter. But anyway, I think, of course, as you said, you want proper procedure to happen. You don't want to leave any stone unturned.
You don't want people to poke holes at the conclusion.
Exactly. Salmon letters, essentially, those who are criticized within the reports are notified. Any entity at all that is criticized in the reports are notified, because, of course, it could lead to public opinion will always affect your reputation. But with that, I think, is it surprising? Not entirely. I think here in TNT we've grown so accustomed to delays and so much money being spent. The thing is, he delivered a date. He said his mandate was, his personal mandate that he was taking was to deliver it by the end of April, April 20th to be exact. Now that's not possible. So therefore, all those who are part of the Commission of Inquiry, will this add to their billing hours? Obviously it would, because they're still doing the work of the Commission of Inquiry. And that's the thing, it's further expense where those victims involved do not have closure, where those who are accused cannot have their name cleared. And let's be honest, ladies and gentlemen, it's just gotten to the point now where does it really make sense? People will make the argument, it has to happen, it should happen. Those need to be brought to justice. But just bear in mind a couple of things. One, a police investigation was taking place. Where are we with that? Two, this report could not actually lead. When I mean could not lead, this report cannot charge anyone. So this Commission of Inquiry cannot actually charge anyone. So overall, it's further delays, more money being spent, just anticipating that this report be released soon, please.
Now, one could argue that closure was not necessarily going to happen from any sort of report or inquiry into the matter, because it's a difficult situation, and what each individual family member or person involved of the victims, etc., what they might require might vary. So it's not so simple to say, oh, we just put a report, they get closure. So there's always that. Also, getting criminal charges in TNT, the odds of that, not so high. But I think one of the key things out of this would be give us a breakdown of what happened so that we could prevent something like this from happening again. That's my main concern, because in my opinion, it's just a matter of time at this point, especially since it seems as though the longer this goes on, the more it gets forgotten about.
I think getting criminal charges in TNT is the easier part. I think having your case heard is the more difficult part.
Yeah, but that doesn't really mean anything. It's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Maybe public opinion could lynch somebody rhetorically, but you know, I don't care if somebody's charged. I need the case to actually go through.
And that's precisely the thing. As soon as somebody's charged in TNT, they're labeled. It's just a matter of their case actually being heard. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on Talking Point. And when we return, well, we'll continue the conversation this morning. We'll be right back after this.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Between 2020 and 2022, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service recorded 4,857 reports of domestic violence.
And there was a general figure that 10% of men may be abusers. When we look at the abusers, we found that some of them, it's like a scripted behavior.
Let's say my sister, I suspect she's in an abusive relationship. What are the signs that I need to look out for? Early signs.
What's Up Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Talking Point. And of course, on this show, we do monitor international news with regards to what might potentially affect us here. When the first bank, Silicon Valley Bank, got into trouble, we didn't necessarily think that we had anything to be concerned about in TNT. However, the reason for now, I believe, a fourth bank, at least that has hit the news in a major way, has gotten into serious peril in the global financial institution, it does beg the question, to what extent is TNT vulnerable, given the fact that our financial institutions, I do believe, they invest abroad into those markets. So, for more, we have this morning our Cue This.
Switzerland's biggest bank, UBS, has agreed to take over its troubled rival, Credit Suisse. The rescue deal follows a weekend of emergency talks between the two banks after Credit Suisse saw its value plummet in the last week. Banking regulators hope the deal will restore confidence to the financial markets. Our business editor, Simon Jack, is with me, and you can explain, Simon, why this deal is so important.
It's a very historic moment, Jane, in global banking history because, as you say, Switzerland's biggest bank, UBS, is buying Switzerland's second biggest bank, Credit Suisse, both top 30 banks, at a knockdown price in a deal that's been rushed through this weekend by Swiss authorities, who are very aware that confidence in the world financial markets has been rocked. Well, how come? Credit Suisse became the biggest and most important casualty of a situation that has already seen the failure of two mid-sized US banks, Silicon Valley there and Signature Bank, and an emergency industry £30 billion whip round for another, First Republic Bank. Why did these banks get in trouble? Well, the reasons differ, but the main reason behind it all is this. Global interest rates, these are US interest rates, after many years of being close to zero, you can see there, have rocketed as countries have tried to bring down inflation, caused mainly by higher energy prices as Russian energy was shut off or shunned. Now, that sudden change has hit the value of some of even the safest investment the banks keep some of their money in. So the big question is, are we back to 2008? Is this a rerun of the financial crisis? Well, this is precisely what the authorities are trying to avert. They, in the US and the UK, tonight are saying they support this particular deal, and they stress that banks are strong, much stronger than they were in 2008, and people's savings and deposits are safe. But Credit Suisse has 5,000 employees in the UK. Many of those are probably not safe. The acid test as to whether this Swiss rescue has calmed nerves in the financial world will be when markets open tomorrow, which is why it was so imperative to get this deal done tonight.
The UBS Group has offered to buy Credit Suisse for up to $1 billion. Now, the interesting thing there is, I was here about an hour ago saying that the stock price has dropped from 80 billion Credit Suisse some years ago when it was at its peak to about 6 billion on Friday. So if this 1 billion is the sort of ballpark we're talking about, that is still a fraction of where the shares closed on Friday.
That's a kind of bargain basement price in banking terms.
And I think that's the sort of environment we're in at the moment. The other very interesting thing here is the Swiss government, as we had confirmed, were overseeing the talks between the regulators and UBS and Credit Suisse. It does appear that potentially they could step in here to bypass the country's laws, whereby under normal circumstances, if an offer came in like this, even a distressed bank, it would have to put to shareholders, they would have to vote on it. That is sort of the constitution. So,
and presumably not just the Credit Suisse shareholders, the UBS shareholders. We want our shares put at risk by taking on this problem bank? And
precisely, and as we were hearing earlier, the fact this is Switzerland's two main banks here, some will be queasy at the prospect of all of a sudden creating a sort of super Uber bank.
Especially one with liabilities.
Well, there's the other issue. We understood some of the stumbling blocks here that they were discussing were the potential liabilities, because Credit Suisse has had its issues for many years. I mean, it's got a rich history, 170 years it's been around for, but in the past few years it's been beset by problems, obviously reported these issues with its financial reporting earlier last week, which kind of triggered this whole domino effect. So there will be potentially some nasties lurking on the balance sheet they'll have to deal with. So I think they were seeking some kind of backstop from the government, that they would stump up some of this money potentially, depending on what they find. But I mean, clearly $1 billion is pretty cheap. And again, nodding to the importance, the pace of this, because of the impact this is having on the wider banking world and the entire financial world.
And that's
2008 was a very different time than now. I think there's a feeling that every bank pretty much was exposed to that. was bad mortgage debt, it was badly packaged up financial instruments, which every bank was exposed to.
They were all in that field.
So once one went, there was a huge collapse of the house of cards, if you like. I think then post 2008, stronger regulations were brought in to ensure that banks had stronger balance sheets, could ride out difficult weather. I mean, frankly, it's heaving it down at the moment, so they're being stretched to the limit, aren't they? And incidentally, Joe Biden in America was talking about last week about Donald Trump rowing back on some of those regulations. That's potentially why Silicon Valley Bank and First Republic and Signature sort of fell into some of these issues. So I think if we look at Credit Suisse and SVB, very different problems they've had, but I think the trouble is when it comes to certainly stocks and shares and markets, it's all about sentiment. Sometimes common sense goes out the window. It's all about fear, greed. At the moment we're in a very fearful, nervous situation, as we saw stocks across the world sliding last week.
That video courtesy of the BBC, and of course some of it was based before the deal actually went through. Ultimately, UBS ended up paying 3 billion Swiss francs for Credit Suisse, about 60% less than the bank was worth when markets closed on Friday. Again, the idea was to try to stabilize the situation before markets opened today, which could have seen the share price of Credit Suisse continue to plummet. And I believe the fear ultimately was that, well, if one bank could go down, all of a sudden people's trust in the financial institutions and the banking sector might be shaken. It could potentially lead to the run on maybe a bank in not necessarily the exact same amount of distress, but in distress enough where its own people, its own creditors, its own debtors, its own people who have just money, everyday people, their money in the bank, it could lead to them looking to get withdrawals. And at some point, a bank is just not going to have enough liquidity to cover the amount of money that it's keeping.
I think this story, the development over a couple of days, I think when you have to hear the head of the European Union, when you hear the President of the United States come out to try and reassure individuals that the banking system is strong, and your money is safe, I think that alone will make people wonder, listen, we have a crisis in our hands. The thing is, it started really with Silicon Valley Bank, and then it happened with Signature Bank in New York City. And those two banks were actually in trouble from the aspect of exactly who they fund and how they make their money. Now, those two banks in particular actually gave loans mostly, or invested in a lot of startup technology companies, which of course following the COVID-19 pandemic, many of them have actually failed. Even companies over the COVID-19 pandemic who were doing so well are now experiencing severe issues. Is the Zoom platform, for example, they've had to lay off so many hundreds of staff. TeamViewer, for example, they've also had to lay off so many staff, and they're facing a cash flow issue.
Well, the irony, though, is that as the private sector was looking to go back to tell their workforce, go back into the offices, to some extent, there's been a little bit of a rebound there where now people are realizing, whoa, we can't turn back the clock and just go all back at work, and some businesses are embracing Zoom. So I don't know how much they will drop off, but that's a...
Well, they're not dropping off.
Yes.
But there's certainly their market share is not where it was. It's obviously gotten weaker. The thing is that when you take a look at Signature Bank, based in New York City, their UK arm was bought over by HSBC for just £1 last week. Right? And the reason being is that the UK Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, before he actually read his budget statement last week Wednesday, he says that these small firms who had money in Signature Bank are very vital to the economy and vital to the future of Britain. So the government, as well as HSBC, saw it necessary to actually take over the bank. I mean, if you're buying a bank for £1, the reason being is because there are rules, obviously. It has to be bought for a sum, and a sum that could be accounted. £1 is exactly that. The other aspect of this entire situation, apart from the purpose of these banks or this specialty in terms of investments, which we spoke of, which is technology and technological startups, you mentioned this, is the interest rates as well around the world. Now, the European Central Bank, interestingly, I think it was last week or the week before, actually raised the interest rates again. It is obviously affecting these banks, mostly banks who have a specialty in their investments, investment portfolio. But thus far across the world, apart from these banks, we haven't heard much issues with other banking systems or other major banks. We do know that share and stock prices in Asia, as well as Europe and the United States, they have been affected.
Yes.
But at this point, they've stabilized. We're looking to see further updates, of course, today and throughout the week.
Well, that's the thing. We still have to see now how the stock markets will take this bit of news, because it's happened throughout the weekend and the stock markets were essentially closed. The thing is, ultimately speaking, the high interest rates, and we went over this a couple of months ago, this is a different type of recession. Whereas you had the New Deal back in the Great Depression, where you spend on infrastructure, you get money flowing, and that could get you out of the recession. This is different because this is being caused by inflation due to supply issues. We have the cash, we just don't have enough goods, so the price of what exists is going up, and it's pushing us into a recession. It seems like globally. So they are raising inflation rates to try to combat that, but it's causing some of these investment portfolios all of a sudden to become less valuable. The banks are watching their value somewhat disappear. I believe that's what happened with Silicon Valley Bank very directly. With regard to Credit Suisse, their valuation, their stock price was not an all-time high, but it was still 13.9 billion February 2021. So they had problems beyond what Silicon Valley Bank had. However, the vulnerabilities was exposed further. Again, I guess it goes back to what we say about COVID. The fallout is exposing your vulnerabilities. Now, we're tied in to some extent to the global financial market, because as far as I am aware, that's where our Heritage of Civilization Fund is investing, and that's where it got growth from investing into those markets. I do believe our banks also invest abroad. So I'm not too sure now if the financial markets around the world take a hit, to what extent is our banking sector and our HSF also going to have to some extent now, take a hit?
I think it questions to what extent are we a player on the international scale. If you're looking at it from that perspective, yeah, we will take a hit. Certainly. I mean, at this point in time, the local banking systems and the local banks in TNT have not actually saw the need to make any comments or actually, bring any reassurance to their customers. I think at this point, we're more or less okay. But that could change in an instant.
That's the thing. We're hoping that it ends here. I don't think anybody necessarily thought that it would have gone on beyond one or two banks in the States.
The thing is, with Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank in particular, I was rather surprised, because you would think that if it's one thing following the COVID-19 pandemic, and we're still in a pandemic, by the way, we haven't been declared as we're out of a pandemic.
Yeah.
But following the reopening, following all these major closures across the world, you would think that technology or technology hubs were the one sector that would actually improve. And it's the complete opposite. A lot of these companies that are involved in technology are just actually suffering the biggest. And the thing is, at this time, if you have investment in these companies, you will be worried, you will be concerned. And I think that is where our local financial sector, they will have their concerns.
The problem is it's not straightforward, because we never had something like this before. One, yes, we've had pandemics before, but they were different. And also, technology was different then. So to say how the public will respond, what will it want to do en masse, where will the flow of people go, more remote, less remote, with regards to work, with regards to their personal lives, it's difficult to say. I think the streaming platforms and a lot of the pandemic entertainment booms that we saw also is in jeopardy. But
they've dropped.
But the flip side is, traditional cinema and other traditional forms of entertainment, it's not as though they're now just booming automatically either. So whoever could figure it out and read the tea leaves and find the right path of profitability, there might be an opportunity in there. But there's a lot of risk that comes to that opportunity, as I've always said, when it comes to situations like these.
Whoever could figure it out, just let Sean and I know that secret. Anyway, let's take a break here on Talking Points, and when we return, well, as we mentioned earlier, the inauguration for President-elect Christine Kangaloo starts from 10:30 this morning. We'll get into that in a bit.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And today is the day where the incumbent President Paulomé Weeks will be stepping down and making way for his successor. That is the only seventh that we've had in our nation's somewhat brief history, president, and that is Christine Kangaloo. And to mark the occasion, we thought perhaps we should look back and see how things have gone on for the last 5 years and maybe speak about what we hope for the future. But first, to look back, we do have a short clip from President Paulomé Weeks' inauguration where she gave us 3 wishes she hoped to see during her time from the people of TNT. Let's take a listen.
I have something to ask of you. No, I'm not asking for a honeymoon period. I well understand that your reservoir of patience with holders of high office has all but run dry. But I'm going to rub my imaginary lamp and appeal to the collective genie that you are. So here are my 3 wishes. First, I ask all of you to find ways to make a positive difference in whatever your sphere of influence. Secondly, I ask those of you with a platform from which to disseminate your views to find new and creative ways to inspire your audience while reporting responsibly and commenting civilly on the facts, and in particular on social media, which is here to stay and has great value by giving a voice to those who might otherwise remain voiceless. And last, and before I run out of goodwill, we speak all the time about how violent a society we have become. True. But the climate of violence is not created or even birthed in overt acts. It's embedded in everyday talk, in commonplace interaction, in schools, in marketplaces, in business places, in rum shops, and worst of all, in homes. I ask you to be mindful in your use of language, remembering that a soft answer often turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger, and that pleasant speech increases one's persuasiveness. By faith, let us stand together and then go forward side by side as we carry our nation to greatness. I thank you.
Well, of course, that is the outgoing President Paula May Weeks. That was at the start of her time, Keaton, and she had positive messages that she wanted to see from the people. There's some irony there. Don't necessarily want to get too much into a bombastic analysis of what she just said. However, I agree with what she just said. Essentially, basically saying, you know, be a positive difference with your platform, inspire your audience, you know, with whatever platform you have available to you. And she acknowledged social media as being something that's obviously not going to be going away. We have to figure out how to use it responsibly as a society. And then finally, how you communicate. And this is something that where I find much of the irony for me comes from with regards to being mindful with your use of language and having pleasant speech in order to increase your persuasiveness. It seems as though a lot of public speakers, just in general, seem to have forgotten our outgoing president's wish for the nation.
I think she forgot it as well.
Did she though? Did she? To be fair to her, while I don't necessarily agree with her stance on some of the things that she did, well, that said, ironically, the most serious ones, I don't necessarily think she used aggressive speech. It was more of the less significant situations where she was a bit bombastic herself.
There are three things I would remember Paula May Weeks for. The first is for her speeches, very much difficult to digest at times given the language and the approach. And I say difficult to digest because even though we should aim for a high quality and a high standard, sometimes you wonder, is the individual reading this actually listening to what they're saying? Because I don't necessarily see them practicing it. The second thing I would remember her for, there was was it a Carnival in Tobago with the steel pan playing, and she got up from her seat and she decided to dance and to the delight of the crowd. I thought that was wonderful. I thought that was quite nice, yeah.
Show some personality.
Exactly, and the only personality I ever really saw. The third aspect of it, of course, that we will always remember Paula May Weeks for. I think this is the thing that highlighted her term as president. Police Service Commission report, as well as her impeachment proceeding. You see, the thing is, putting all that aside, I'd like to thank Paula May Weeks for her service. I don't know exactly what she did or what she achieved, other than the fact that now she's going to receive a wonderful pension for her time spent doing nothing. So I'm thanking her for her service because it is perhaps the politically correct thing to do as an outgoing president. Well, I miss Paula May Weeks. How could you miss somebody who really didn't exist in the first place, you know, as the president? The highs and lows of a presidency, it's very hard to describe Paula May Weeks as a president, other than the fact that really you were there in the most ill and wrong of timings, you know, within the public sphere and within the public hemisphere. But enjoy your retirement.
I think it begs the question, why is it that we constantly look to the legal profession and the legal fraternity as the source of the vast majority of our civic leaders? Yes, understanding the law is important, but for all the lawyers we have within the political sphere, they still get outside counsel, right, to cover their bases because their own counsel, for whatever reason, seems insufficient. And I get that, you're your worst client. You yourself make your own worst client. But why are we looking with regards to the legal profession? Because not every lawyer, even ones who speak well in court, make good public speakers and make good leaders. Because the type of decisions you make when you're in that sort of position you have to change your mindset. And I do wonder, to what extent did she do so? Now, she understands it to some degree with her background as a judge, but still, ultimately speaking, you know, what has she done? Well, when it came to events that was held under the purview of her office, she made a big hullabaloo with regards to, well, if you're not married, you can't have a +1 or whatever that was. I can't even remember now. It seems so far ago when compared to the more recent situation that actually did impact our social framework, and that is with regards to the merit list. And she has gone on record to say, you know, she has been frustrated. She was not able to say everything that she wanted to say about the matter. That's somewhat interesting. I'm curious what it is that she would have to say. I wish she could tell us. But I think ultimately speaking, though, even if you are potentially right with regards to the ends, this is what should have been seen. The means, the ends don't always justify the means. So how it all went down is highly questionable, and that is enough to cast a shadow of doubt with regards to your legacy, because that was the one major decision that she more or less had to make as president. Some presidents don't have a big decision to make. To have one that will impact the country, it's a responsibility. To some extent, it's an honor, and I have to say, I think she dropped the ball on that one.
There have been suggestions that she's not a president of the people or a president for the people. And she actually responded to this in an interview with another media network. Her response to the concern whether or not people saw her as a people's president, she says, "I've heard people say that I am not warm. I have to confess that might be entirely true, but I'm not prepared to be what I am not to please other people. So for me, it has always been what you see, what you get." Now, usually I would say, I stand by you. Don't ever change yourself in order to please another individual. Live your life. As long as you're not bringing harm or disruption to other people, live your life, you know, be respectful. But in this particular instance, you barely saw Paula May Weeks even with a smile. And this is the thing. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, other people's opinions might differ, the president at least should have been a voice for the people. The president should have been an individual, even by her three wishes, whom people or the citizens looked up to for inspiration, perhaps for some hope. You know, a president that the people loved. The thing is that little often did you even find anybody who cared to comment, simply because they might not have even known who Paula May Weeks was.
Well, question. I think she was in over her head. Not that she isn't a capable person, it's just her skill set does not match up with what was required. Do you agree with that?
Her skill sets, you need to be more specific. Whether or not she has a proven track record in terms of her career, I mean, being a High Court judge, achieving that is not necessarily an easy task at all.
Right, so in
terms of that aspect,
I would assume her skill set would be in line with that.
So in terms of public life or perhaps service, okay, she's done well there. In terms of personality, no, I don't think so. I don't think she was up to the task in that aspect.
Well, now, let's not just dwell too much on the past, because today is the day where we transition. Moving forward, we go from a former High Court judge to, I guess you could say, a career politician. Somebody who is not necessarily a big bacchanal name like some of the more frontline public speakers we see from either side of the aisle that sit inside as MPs, that who go on press conferences and political rallies and...
Well, not back now, within recent times. If you go back to probably about, you know...
Well, everybody probably has like one or some things, but like when it comes to like the real controversial names, so her name is a little less so, one could argue, than... I don't want to necessarily name names in this situation to call out people, but we all know who they are, folks. We all know who are the real, the pot stirrers in our political landscape. I don't necessarily think, at least recently, she has not been. What do you make of her now becoming president? Because obviously, though, she's directly tied to the current administration, but there is allowances for that in the law.
I think it is ridiculous that we have a president who is going to be tied politically. I'd put it this way. In the sense that publicly she has already manifested her political side. Publicly she has already proclaimed her political affiliations. The thing is that one might wonder, with Paula May Weeks before she entered office, was she political? The same thing with Anthony Carmona, the same thing with every president who's preceded Christine Kangaloo. So the thing is, as I said, publicly it has been made. She's served as a senator in various positions. She stood on political platforms speaking. And I have not always, and let me stress this, not always. There are times I said, well done, but I have not always been impressed with her as president of the Senate. With all that being said, she has asked the nation to give her a chance. She has also told the nation that regardless of her political affiliations in the past, she no longer holds membership to this political institution, be it the People's National Movement. That doesn't really matter. I don't care about that.
But I mean, to be fair to her, do we have anything to suggest that that could be true?
My position on this entire situation, I will stick with it. With the comments that she said, that she can be a fair president and give her the chance, prove all of us wrong. You have 5 years. It's not going to happen anytime before that. And after 5 years, who knows? We'll see what happens. But prove us all wrong. Prove us wrong. You are getting the opportunity, not because we've given you the opportunity. Quite frankly, we have no choice. Once you're elected by the sacred halls of Parliament, and that is the Electoral College, we as the citizens had no choice once you were nominated. But quite frankly, at this point, prove everybody wrong.
Before I get into that, is Parliament still sacred?
Parliament will always be sacred. The individuals who are inside the halls of Parliament may not necessarily understand or know what a privilege it is to sit in that position and how honored they should be to serve the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Now back to our incoming president. The thing is, her predecessor more or less did not really have a serious challenge that she had to deal with until her second to last year, for all intents and purposes. So now it's possible that we might not actually see Christine Kangaloo have to do anything of significance. The flip side is we're waiting for that one, maybe two instances where she has to make a serious decision. We're hoping that we don't regret what it is that we've been left with. We're hoping that we could see the independence. To what extent, I don't know if I'm that confident, because I do wonder if, because the job is easy for most of the time that you're there, you're just there to kind of hold on the fort. You're a caretaker. You don't actually have anything to do. Somebody else does the heavy lifting with regards to the government, right? I do wonder if then now when, the spotlight is put on the president, if they're not prepared for that challenge because they haven't had to. Paula May Weeks didn't have anything to do for the 3.5 years before the merit list reached on her lap and she withdrew it in suspicious fashion.
Well, for all intents and purposes, the key is, I'm taking a line out of your book. For all intents and purposes, the key is Christine Kangaloo, learn from your predecessors, learn from the things that they did or they didn't do, learn from their mistakes, but also learn from the life that you've lived thus far. And also understand that the current situation that we're in, because tomorrow morning when you wake up, as with when you woke up this morning and yesterday morning, it's a bed of roses for you. And though everybody faces their own challenges, I don't think you're quite facing the challenges that many people out there are. So be an inspiration, be a beacon of light, be a beacon of hope, be a president that the people, all the people of Trinidad and Tobago will love. And whatever you do, do not be a puppet, just as those more or less before you have been. I wish you the best. And like I said, proof is in the performance. Prove us all wrong. Anyway, let's break for news on the hour now. And when we return, we open up the phone lines. Stay tuned.
Here is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Female relative of Form 1 student charged for attempted murder. Traffic restrictions due to inauguration ceremony. 9 homeless after fire in Claxton Bay. And internationally, earthquake in Ecuador kills 15. Now for the details. A New Grant woman has been charged for attempted murder and exposing a child to danger following an incident involving a 13-year-old that occurred on Thursday at the woman's home. 43-year-old Hema Manbod Singh is scheduled to appear at the Princestown Magistrates Court today. According to police reports, around 3:40 p.m. on Thursday, a 13-year-old Form 1 student was at his home in New Grant when he had an argument with a female relative. The argument escalated, during which the woman allegedly mixed the contents of a packet with a meal she had prepared for the teen. The student started consuming the meal after having an altercation with a male relative and began feeling nauseous and started vomiting. He was taken to the Princestown Health Facility and later transferred to the San Fernando General Hospital for further treatment. Traffic restrictions for the inauguration ceremony of the President of Trinidad and Tobago have commenced from 7 a.m. until 2 p.m. today. Drivers are advised to pay attention to police officers and traffic wardens around the savannah where the ceremony will take place. The reception will occur at Napa. President-elect Christine Kangaloo will be inaugurated as the country's second female president, taking the place of President Paula May Weeks. A bushfire has destroyed several homes in Claxton Bay over the weekend, leaving 9 homeless. The families lost everything. A 3-year-old is among the homeless.
Creep up to close to his house, flat down, burn down his house first, and then after, well, the blaze, the height, well, they look my house and all too. Everything burned down right up to the ground. We couldn't save nothing because we had to save ourselves, right? Because the fire was too high and the breeze was too, high too, blowing real heavy.
In international news now, at least 15 people have died and more than 400 are injured after a 6.7 magnitude earthquake struck Ecuador's southern coast. Buildings were damaged in several cities when the earthquake hit at around midday. The southern province of El Oro was the worst affected and 12 people died there, authorities said. Northern Peru felt the quake and a 14-year-old girl died in Tumbes, a border province, when her home collapsed. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
But if we died with Christ, we have faith that we will also live with him. We know that Christ has been raised from the dead, and he will never die again. Death no longer has power over him. He died to sin once and for all with his death, but he lives for God with his life. Join WESN as we explore the death and resurrection of Christ with He is Risen, a perspective from bearing leaders within the Christian faith. He is Risen, starting March 27th, only on WESN, the content capital. Welcome back to Talking Point, and thank you very much to Mr. Denise Martin for news on the hour. I think it's about time that Sean and I pause for a moment and give you, the viewer, the opportunity to join the conversations, express your opinions, your thoughts as to the latest happenings here in Trinidad and Tobago. The phone lines are now open, ladies and gentlemen. The number should be up on your screen in a moment or so. I only ask that you do not call in at the very final minute. And, of course, just be mindful of the timing of your contribution. I can't stress that enough. We've given leeway to lots of callers, and we've been unfair many a times. If we have to cut you, please know that we're not trying to be rude or disrespectful. We just want to give everybody an equal opportunity. And, of course, just be respectful of other callers and their opinions. Can we have the numbers up on the screen, please, of the telephone lines so that the callers can join us this morning on Talking Points. Just want to go back to what was being suggested by the Chief Justice and this Office of the DPP thing. I cannot stress enough, and I think it's important to stress it. Sometimes you have to know when to stay quiet in a public setting. Paula Mayweek said she couldn't say things that she wanted to say publicly. She did not see it fit in her role or her capacity. The thing is, again, let me say that the Chief Justice should have actually been a mediator, right? I know things will not come to light. We wouldn't see things, we wouldn't hear things if they are spoken of behind closed doors. But I think rather than make these statements publicly, he should have been a mediator to try and ease the situation. Whether or not light was shed on it, however you like to put it, however you like to think about it, I just personally think that it was the wrong decision.
In our politics, there's nothing to suggest that a third-party mediator would be effective. This is not necessarily a knock on the current administration. That's why I said in our politics. However, I do agree with you in the sense that Ivor Archie could have been a third party, a calming influence, in part just by not adding more fuel to the fire and turning it into a bigger political firestorm, because it's one thing if it's between, cabinet members and the DPP. Now that the Chief Justice, who's supposed to be independent, is coming in there, granted, if this was a case where the DPP was, completely at fault, okay, fine, the weight of your independent voice matters. But we haven't heard anything substantial, more or less gotten any evidence substantial to say that, hey, the DPP is all wrong here and this is all his fault. Because the Chief Justice is the man who has to answer for some of these situations.
Anyway, we have a caller on the line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Very good to hear from you, sir. Good morning.
Yes, I'm glad to be with you all again. Just calling to say that today the inauguration of the president, and I wish you all the best. I hope to give her a chance. We all make mistakes in life, so she deserves a chance to show what she's worth, and I hope everything goes well. You gentlemen, take care of yourselves and be good.
Excuse me, sir. Before you go, if I may just ask you, it's good to hear from you again, but all is well with you?
Well, I'm hanging in there, to be quite honest. All is not all that well. But God's given and God's strength, and I have a lot of faith. I hope that things will work out and I can go on for some more years to see you all, wish you all full potential. Thank you for taking my call and have a great day and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. And all the same to you. It's actually a very good surprise to hear from you because, we know that you went well. And Sean and I were actually a bit concerned. So with that call, thank you very much for your dose of positivity. And you're always in our thoughts because we look forward to you calling on the program many more times.
But it was a good point that he made, and I think if we could ask, say, the current commissioner, who is against the clock. That's the problem with the current commissioner. It's not that we don't want to give her a chance, it's just that it's against the clock. The moderate waits for no one. With regards to the president, we don't have that ticking time bomb that's always there in the background that we have to be concerned about. So we could afford to give her some time and to give her a chance. It's just, the irony, of course, is the one time that she has a decision to make, depending on the decision, it might, hopefully it's good, not good. I mean, it's hard to say because it's not as though, there's a track record or the president will regularly have to make these type of decisions. It's always some obscure thing that is few and far between, not regular.
Well, I'll comment after this caller from Shagonas. Good morning. Hi, good morning. You're live.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
I see you all are assuming that because somebody belongs to a political party, they cannot be neutral.
Yep.
That is not so. And I have seen nothing that Ms. Kangal will have done in the past to suggest otherwise. As regards the outgoing president, I find she was a very good president. everybody confused that issue with the merit list. There is nothing wrong with taking back a merit list if you put up a proper reason, you sign the relevant documents. Nobody have asked on that. And for what came out, because when Dr. Rowley went there again, everybody's assuming that the discussions he had on the merit list took place in the presence of the president. And that obviously was not so. What they said, it was on a visit there. And that would explain the reason why the merit list was withdrawn. Because what Dr. Rowley said, he asked her, what about his complaint that he made? And then she realized that that complaint had not been investigated. And when she withdrew the merit list, she immediately put up somebody to investigate.
As far as I'm aware, she did not. The investigation was commissioned by the Service Commission.
No, the person who withdrew the public list, they went and commissioned it. Because that is the reason they withdrew it.
Right, but the problem, Professor, is there is no legal basis to withdraw the list.
Why?
Because there's no procedure. So, technically speaking, there will never be. Right, but you cannot justify a reason because there's no criteria.
Why? I just told you the reason was the Prime Minister asked the
Yes, but Professor, the Parliament debates the merit list. So if there was questions or black marks against somebody on the list, that could have been debated in Parliament.
It was something that was not investigated. There's a difference between a black mark.
I understand that, but you did make the comment that there was no reason given as to why the list was withdrawn.
Who said there was no reason?
There's no legal reason that could be given because there's
you
none.
have not disclosed the reason.
All right, Professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. We will have to disagree on that there.
My simple response to you, Professor, you have your opinions, of which I respect. I have mine. That is just the most appropriate way to respond.
Yeah, you want to go on him?
No, I just wanted to comment on the
just
previous
before
call,
you do,
but go ahead.
I just want to say, even courts acknowledge past affiliations as potential conflicts of interest. So I get what you're saying. It's possible. But the flip side is even the courts acknowledge that it's very likely that your past affiliation, which is very recent, we're talking yesterday, she was a member of the party.
I did not quite understand the comment that just because somebody is politically affiliated does not mean they cannot be neutral.
No, technically he's right. It's just in practice you don't see it happen.
Great, thank you. In practice you don't see it happen. Therefore it has me rather bamboozled. But going back to what the first caller was saying about everybody makes a mistake. Everybody makes a mistake. I think it's the magnitude of the mistake that counts. That's a hell of a mistake to make. But putting that aside for a moment, I think that we live in a society, I think here in TNT, forget about around the world, where everybody waits for you to fail. Everybody cannot wait for you to fail. We're waiting anxiously. That's the society that we live in now. Because if you succeed, and if you do well, everybody will undermine that. I mean, even when the Prime Minister announced this thing with the Dragon gas field and the licenses, people said, Keaton, you didn't give the Prime Minister enough roses. You know, you weren't giving him roses. You were giving him what carnations or chrysanthemums or something like that, right? So everybody, I still have my reservations about everybody has their opinions, but the thing is that because everybody's waiting for you to fail, it just makes it easier that the very moment that you slip and the very moment that you make a mistake and they pick up on it, that's what you're going to be remembered for.
Well, interestingly enough, both with regards to the allegations of human trafficking and now with the situation with the DPP's office being understaffed, how it was reported ran with some of the with headlines that were a bit sensational. One could argue that it in some quarters maybe favored the government or went with what they said as the lead-in to the story a bit too much. So I do wonder, we could even see it in media with regards to, well, saying someone is a failure is going to sell more than having a mature, stale conversation with regards to, how to fix something.
I don't think the state, I think the fourth estate doesn't necessarily label people as a failure, but I think the fourth estate has also...
They use the words
I think the fourth estate has let us all down. I mean, essentially they failed. Anyway, we have a caller now with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Just want to make a comment.
Sure.
All I want to say is our goodly Prime Minister should follow the example of Barbados' Prime Minister, Mia Mottley. How could they?
Thank you very much.
Goes back to what Paul Week said with regards to your speech and to have gentle language, to be more persuasive. Paul Week could be fiery, but her fiery and what locally is fiery is two different things.
I think it's rather amazing. Imagine that you're living in this island and there are those, because this is not the first time I've heard that. I mean, we've even spoken about it before on this program, comparing Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley to Prime Minister Mia Mottley. But it is rather amazing that there are those out there who actually wished for another Prime Minister, not in terms of somebody here in Trinidad and Tobago, but somebody outside of TNT leading another nation. We wish that they were our Prime Minister.
I mean, to some extent, I think she actually compares very preferably to a lot of world leaders, to many larger countries. With that said, do have to acknowledge the fact that our government and our Prime Minister on the world stage, she has done good work on a diplomatic level for TNT and for the region. Part of the issue is just how he communicates the difference, the stark comparison, and it's difficult to get away from that because we're both members of the English-speaking Caribbean, we're both Commonwealth nations, we're right next door to each other. You can't get away from the comparison. He doesn't like it, but he should understand that, look, those are the breaks, buddy. It's not everybody else's fault that you compare badly to the obvious comparison.
That may not necessarily even be his fault. I'm not making excuses for Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. But if I am to be fair, perhaps that's the only way he knows how to communicate. Perhaps Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley's only knowledge of approaching a situation is through aggression and through actually being an instigator. And that's the thing. Perhaps that's the only way. I think it's our fault as a people that we saw this and that we knew this and that we still decided, this is the best option. That being said, if you compare options side by side, everybody has a democratic right, and they voted and so on and so forth. We're here in this position now by our own doing, by our own choice. As I said, it may not be his fault, because that's the only thing that he knows. But as somebody said last week on this program, a nation gets the Prime Minister it deserves. A nation gets the leader it deserves. So even though we would want Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley to be more like Mia Mottley, I think I'd like any politician here in TNT to be more like Mia Mottley.
Folks, the phone line's open 623-9376, but to be fair to him, he's not necessarily all aggression. There are other examples of that, and he's controlled his messaging, I think, quite well at times. It's just every now and then he has a slip-up where he gets too defensive or too passionate, one could argue. That's not always a bad thing, except you are the leader of a nation and you do have to be careful how you say things because people will interpret it however they choose to interpret it. You can't control that, and it could lead to some negative interpretation. Some people might take the bad example in the worst possible way and run with it. Who knows when, with some of the things that he said in his first term that I'm not even sure if I could repeat technically. But
you can't, you shouldn't.
And yes, you're right. It's not necessarily his fault. I would argue that they have other politicians who don't have his natural charisma and passion in their personality, that try to be aggressive and fiery, and it just comes off as very fake and artificial. And at least with the Prime Minister, I can say, well, listen, this is part of the person's makeup, and I have seen times when he has refrained himself from going where, as far as he could go. But to see others willfully choose to, no, this is how we're going to win elections, we're going to hit them with this, and it just looks so fake, but it's still riling up the bacchanalists in a negative way. I do wonder, that to me in some ways could be even worse.
Where are people that like bacchanal? Where are people that like entertainment? We don't know. We don't know how to draw. Okay, I keep saying this, right? If you take a look at political meetings across France, okay, not even political meetings, but when you take a look at what happened last week, and we only know what the camera showed us, by the way. We don't know what we're told. And the RIC meeting, and I think it was Sense Point 1 and 2 on us, why did it have to get to that stage? Because, we're very critical at times, but if we start doing the same thing that we're critical of, we're just hypocrites.
Yeah.
And why did it have to get to that stage? Because we like bacchanal, we like trouble, we like stirring a pot. Fast forward to the Prime Minister's meeting last week, where he made the comments about the building, the office of the DPP and that building. Why did it have to get to that stage where it was just bacchanal and the sort of commentary that you're hearing? Why do we have to have in Parliament people saying, meet me on the pavement, or Sneaky have bled for you? And that's just on one side. From the other side, there are a lot of things as well that should not be stated, and nobody ever pulls up these people on it. Nobody ever, who's going to pull them up? I mean, we the voters, but we like it like that. Sean, let me tell you something. How it works in TNT is that this morning, I can say something and get absolute criticism for it, because I'm seeing that. The person who is criticizing me may say something very similar. They've only tweaked it, and they can't take criticism for it.
Yeah.
We practice what we preach against. We love bacchanal.
Well, the most blatant example, and I'm sure there are some on the other side, but it's just the one that comes to mind, is the fact that when the opposition was all up in arms with members of the PNM saying Kamala's full name, as though they were mocking Kamala Prasad-Bissessar.
Kamala Sushila Prasad-Bissessar.
Right, but then they go on to basically say Christine Kangaroo.
Yes.
So
I know. Okay.
It was more. That's the most blatant example.
That's one example. Okay.
I'm sure we could find others on both sides.
What's wrong with I hate that we have to go back.
No.
But you've raised a very, very valuable thing. I just hate the fact that we have to go back on it. But it is things that you remember, because oftentimes there's very little good.
Yeah.
I never saw anything wrong with saying Kamala Sushila Prasad-Bissessar. I never saw the need for it to be said, but it was said. I don't see. Don't we often say Keith Christopher Rowley?
Yes.
Right? But then you pointed it out. You had opposition members on the pavement with protesters saying Christine Kangaroo, and then the opposition never sought to correct them.
And one could argue, look, if the lowest insult that your opponent could do is basically say your full name in a mocking term, all right, we have the gloves on, right? When you go to basically mock someone's name in such a manner, comparing her name to that of an animal, that's a bit lower, and by a bit I mean a lot.
All right, we have this caller from Tirupuna, and then we'll close the lines. Good morning, caller.
Hello?
Hi, you're live.
Hello?
You're live, caller.
Listen, I'm calling from Tunapuna.
Yes.
Now, license office has a serious problem. Now, when they are asking you to come in and pay a license, renew your van inspection, right? Are you listening to me?
I'm listening to you.
Right. But when you go now, license office is sending up the information to them on their form, right? From the Ministry of Transportation. Now, when that form comes up to them, all these people have to do, and a little outlet garage, is to put in a little information on what they do, right? But the whole point about it is the your vehicle engine number differs.
Yeah.
Your vehicle chassis number differs by a digit.
Yep.
And the digit could be E, W, P, M, A, C, whatever it is. You understand? You understand what I'm saying to you?
Yeah.
So that means that your license number is wrong. Your van is a double cab. It now becomes a single cab. In other words, telling you now that you could only carry two people on that vehicle, which is licensed originally for 5 people. Are you with me?
Yeah. I can hear you, yeah.
Right. So I think that you all should look into the matter, because in this is a serious matter where your vehicle could be compounded by the police. You could be charged for changing your engine number, for changing your body, and not notifying license office, which is a charge, right? And that in the true sense is fraud. So that is a serious matter. So I would like you to highlight that to the media and let them know. If you want my name, I'll give it to you.
No.
That's fine. Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Have a good day. We have highlighted it before. And
maybe not in this
it's not
perspective.
Not necessarily this, but we have highlighted on this platform the instances of this happening. I think there were 2 individuals in this office as well who were having issues with their chassis number and their registration number off by a single digit. What you're raising, though, with respect to you had a double cab, but now it's being on your paper as a single cab, that's another inaccuracy from licensing office. So even though digital transformation has taken place, whoever was the individual or individuals who were transferring records from paper-based to sitting mucked up, big time, and that's causing a lot of issues. And I bet you they'll never be penalized for that. But no, we're well aware of the situation, caller. We're very much aware. We have individuals in here who face that.
I think that's the thing now that I guess we haven't explored with digital transformation, just to wind up that topic, is that to what extent now is certain aspects of the public sector resisting that change because you automate some things and it could lead to redundancies and employment, what have you. But then there's also the fact that, look, the transition has to be overseen and carried out by humans. So whatever the inefficiencies are with human work processes, we're going to have to still suffer through that. I do think, though, that the licensing officers and Ministry of Works and Transport, they have taken that into account, into consideration, and they have put some things in place to alleviate the problems. I don't know if they're necessarily able to fully deal with all of the various different issues that pop up in a timely manner. Hopefully, and I do think the police have some understanding of this, so I don't think you're necessarily lined up to be charged as yet. However, if you have a situation that's kind of left alone and then years go by, you do that at your own risk. But I think right now we're okay, and push come to shove, it should be reasonably explainable to a magistrate, but it shouldn't really get to that point, should it?
Why should it get to that
exactly.
point? We're not okay. We're not okay.
Just quick before we close, just want to say...
Actually, let's close the phone lines, please.
Well, yes, but before we close the show, as to our observing the banking sector globally, right now, UBS, they lost as much as, I believe, 13% of their share price. Credit Suisse has their share price has dropped by 60%, and the European banking sector might be looking at an average of a 5% drop in share prices across the board. As confidence wanes, investment portfolios lose value. To what extent is that going to hit us and our investment portfolios again? We will only know in time.
Fingers crossed, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, again, Christine Kanglu is to be sworn in as president in just about an hour's time, ladies and gentlemen.
7th.
We all wish you good luck. We all wish you well.
Yes.
But anyway, as we conclude, thank you to Paul May Weeks for your opening speech and your 3 wishes to the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Talking Points. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day. And should things go good, and we sincerely hope that they do, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.